Hello, everyone. Welcome to another CrowdLinker Fireside Chat. I'm Aram Melkoumov, the host. Thanks so much for tuning in. On the show, as you know, I'm interviewing product and innovation leaders who are working within their big industry, within their big industry disruptive problems from within their organizations. The guests that I have on the show have been in the trenches and have lots of practical advice to share with all of you today about building quality digital products, staying agile, and always having that innovation mindset. Today I'm here with Moshe Mikanovsky. Hope I said that correctly.
Yeah, that was perfect.
All right, to discuss how to manage products in B2B versus B2B2C, and as well as the biggest knowledge gaps in product management and how to use your product skill sets in other areas of your life. So we're looking forward to that. A little bit of background on our guest speaker today. He's a leader in product management who started his career on the engineering side, specifically within the enterprise real-time B2B software space. He fell in love with product management after seeing the gap that existed between what customers wanted and what engineering produced. Moshe enjoys applying his lean iterative approach to develop products that exceed users' expectations. And he's also co-hosts his own podcast called Product for Product, where he talks about products that product professionals use. And I was just on that show, so it was a great experience. He lives in Toronto with his wife and his 3 daughters, and he can't stand the cold winters, but loves his Canadian home and the maple trees all over. So without further ado, thank you for coming on our show today. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Aram. It's really nice to be here.
Awesome. So I'll jump in with the first question. I kind of talked about it when I was going through your bio, but I wanted to ask, how did you really get started into product management? I know you went through, from an engineering background, but what are some other aspects that led to that decision?
Yeah, so I was working for 20 years in engineering, and I was developing software for, like you said, mainly B2B and B2B2C. Most of them were for product companies. And I was lucky enough to always be in touch with the clients. So I was either like working with very small organizations, or I was working like, in that case, the client was like very right there. Or I was working with, even when I was in the army, my clients were like sitting next door to me. Some of the jobs that I had, I was actually in the field doing customization and implementation and pre-sales for clients. So I was always hearing what clients wanted, how they work, see their work environment and stuff like that. And that always put me in a position that I was able to go back to our headquarters and tell them, this is what the client is doing, this is how they're working and stuff like that. And then when the product was delivered, I would not always see that feedback went back, or that they actually solved the problem specifically for the client. So that really was the gap that I saw, and I always loved that type of being the bridge between what the clients want and what the stakeholders want and the business in general through the engineering. So I put 2 and 2 together, and I focused my career on product management because I knew that this is really where I enjoyed being. And the background in engineering helped me with that because I was already there in this environment. But also I was able to speak the engineering language, and I was able to speak the business language, and it just, fit into place really nicely.
Yeah, it's actually a great background that you have, especially in product management. I've seen very successful product managers who come from a technical background, but also from a design background. Having those skill sets, in your wheelhouse does help you, I think, sometimes call it out, when you're like, when you come into like a situation when an engineer is like saying something, you're like, you could, say your piece on it, right?
Yeah, but the first product management position that I had was actually really hard because I had to have a switch in my mind and stop creating solutions or stop thinking about the solutions and stop basically stepping on some engineering toes. And they all the time told me, don't worry about the solution, you worry about the problem. So that was my first 6 months of the first position as a product manager. I was really had to really make that change in my head and how I was working.
Nice. And so, since from your journey when you started into product management to now, and you have a lot more experience now, how has your approach changed when it comes to managing products?
Yeah, the approach changed along the way in many ways, but it was also because this entire paradigm has changed and developed since then. When I started looking for a product management position, it was mostly marketing positions, not so much development teams or product teams like today. And there is a lot of starting talks and starting to have people like Marty Kagan that would start talking about that, but not everyone, and it's until today, unfortunately, not everyone is still familiarized with it, but today is a much better situation than it used to be 10 years ago and definitely 20 years ago. So when I started building software, we didn't have a designer. I didn't even know what a GUI designer is. So we built the entire thing. We thought about the design. We thought about what will solve the problem to the users. We would talk with the users. We would do the entire thing. But we also built features. It was definitely what we're calling feature factory, or in most cases where I worked back then, it was mostly a feature factory, because there was this break between what really the user wanted and what is the software we're trying to build. Along that way, also the learning Agile and practicing Agile, first practicing Scrum and then trying to unpractice Scrum for many different reasons, also brought me into the realization that being Agile is not about delivery or what Scrum is. Scrum is really about delivery. But being Agile is about the product itself. So everything really starts and ends at the product, which is not exactly a truth statement, because everything starts and ends at the users. But when we're talking about we build something, so we're building a product. So we're not practicing Agile for the sake of practicing Agile or for the sake of developing something. We do it for the product. So that was also part of the mindset change that I had to go through. So the Agile mindset, creating an Agile culture, and then practicing, the modern product management practice, which basically has a lot of discovery. So what does discovery is? Discovery of the problem, discovery of solutions, experimentation, using different tools for that, using in a much stronger way, using data analytics systems to actually get some real data about our hypotheses and prove or disprove them, and many things like that. So I think that there is much more than that, what I already explained, but this is probably the core.
How have you come across or have you heard about something called continuous discovery?
Yes, definitely. I even have on my desk Teresa Torres' book right now, Continuous Discovery Habits. So
we had on our show. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she is. So between her and Marty Kagan and maybe a couple of other people in the industry, I don't think that we need to go very far to learn about product management. It's just more about practicing it and really trying it out and see how we can actually get there. And there is still a lot of room out there for many places to improve on that, including myself and where I work. It's I feel it's always like work in progress. We always iterate and see what works better and try better. And sometimes we also have to deal with situations where not everyone really understands what we're trying to do, and that's part of it, to show and tell and really make what makes sense to us also make sense to the people we work with.
That's really important. On that note, I know you worked before in the past between in B2B products as well as B2C. What would you say is like the main differentiator in terms of your experience working with those types of business models?
Yeah, so the main problem that I always saw was who is your client and who are your users. So when you work B2B, you usually, the clients over there are the people that will pay the bills, and the users are the people that will actually use the application. But they were working for the same organization, and if it's an enterprise system, then they will go through some process of checking it out and approving it and all of that stuff. With B2B2C, your client are sometimes one person and one organization, and then your users are someone completely different. So, for example, I worked for a company that we were dealing with loyalty programs. So our clients were the loyalty programs themselves. So we were dealing with loyalty programs like airlines and hotels, etc. The users were their members. So they were not our clients, they were their members. And we needed to please our clients, but we created a product that the users would use. So when you create a product for users, you want to please the users because otherwise they will not use the product. So there is always that tension between who are you pleasing exactly and how do you go by to do that. And that's one of those challenges that usually in B2B it's less prominent. And when you talk about B2C, which I don't have a lot of experience, but B2C is completely different because your users are your clients as well, because they will buy your products, they will consume your product, etc.
In a B2B, B2B2C business model, how do you make sure that you're properly catering to the business, but then also to the paying customers? Yeah,
so that's the thing that as a product manager, you have to make sure that the product is creating value. So you're creating value to the users, but it's also viable to the organization. Now, the question is, where exactly those your clients are sitting? Are they sitting as your users, or are they sitting as your organization? Because on one hand, you're creating value to them by means of creating value to their users, and then you're creating, so there is the value aspect there, but then they also need to be able to work with this product. There is sometimes a different type of administration on their end, and it have to make sense to their business to actually use it. So there is also that viability there. So that's what I'm trying to almost put them in that perspective, that they're actually both. They're both users and organization that have to be viable for. But there is always internal forces also that take place, and those internal forces are, if you have your own internal stakeholders that are in sales, for example, they would mainly care really just about their clients. So they will not really care so much about the users. On the other end, if you also need to support this and you talk with the users directly, you will have your customer support. They will care just about the users. So that's another balance that you really have to put in there. I don't say it's an easy balance. It makes things a bit more complex. Part of the solution of that is really creating a vision that everyone aligned behind. So when you have a vision that the clients are the most important thing for you, if everyone agree to that, you have to agree to that too as a product manager or as part of the product organization, and then you put your focus on that. It's usually something that I try to fight, just to give the voice of the users, and to also show that if the users are happy, the clients will be happy. So there is always this kind of payoff. If they're not happy, then the client will not be happy either.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What about? I know you worked both in the startups and I believe startups and enterprises. What caveats can you maybe point out in terms of the difference between managing products in those two realms?
Right. So it's interesting. First of all, it's the understanding that do we even need a product manager or someone to manage the products? Many startups will, especially if Not really. I mean, I'm trying to think about different situations where I've been to, but some startups the co-founder will come from product, so they will have this strength. But many times they don't. They come from business or from technology, and then usually in most cases they will not really. They will say, okay, we'll do also product management. They'll think that it's good enough, or they're able to do that. And I've heard a lot of retrospectives with startup founders that after the fact they said, oh, if we had a product manager, they could have maybe take us out of these rabbit holes and whatever. On the other end, you have a lot of flexibility over there to do many different things, to do a lot of different type of experimentation. By its essence, it is an experimentation, a startup. Yeah. And also the mindset of building and testing and measuring and building, that mindset of lean startups, if they are lean, of course, is very aligned with the mindset of building products. Where in enterprise, it's the other way around. Usually they will realize that, yes, they need the product managers, but the flexibility is not going to be as strong, and also this, startup mindset or agility mindset will not be as strong. So you always have these two sides of the coins, and when you choose, first of all, you will choose which one you like to work in, what type of environment and energy you like to work in. So that will be one way to do that, and also what are the things that you would that you want to put your focus in your work. Do you want to fight more the need for product management? Because I had to fight, after I was hired, I had to fight with some people that thought, why do we even need you? We don't really need you over here. Yeah. In a startup situation. Or you want to fight more of the, heavy set, sometimes moving uphill of, how do we do product management? Can we do trials, or do we have to do big bang releases and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. With the enterprise side of things, how would you maybe change the enterprise product manager, the role, across maybe every organization to make them more effective leaders? Like, what do you think is broken in enterprise product management, if anything?
I think it all goes back to the culture. And it really depends on the culture of the organization, but the culture doesn't start and stop at product management. It's throughout the entire organization. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of enterprises have already, set in their status quo, and this is how they've done things, and this is how they want to continue doing things. They're comfortable with the specific things. Change are very hard for them sometimes. So if you do have the culture of change, enterprises could actually be very successful. So when you think about Amazon, or you think about Shopify or Spotify or other companies like that, do you think they're enterprises? Probably people don't think of them as enterprises because they're so big and they innovate all the time and whatever. The so big is not really part of that, because that's what would make them maybe an enterprise. But it's their culture. So they have a culture of really open up for changes and open up for different things. And I think one of the things that I like, maybe that got me into product management, is because I do like change. I sometimes get bored if things are the same all the time. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind when things are changing quickly, and when we're trying different things and we learn and all of that stuff. So it really goes back to that culture. But that is sometimes a very hard thing to change. Do you try to change the culture on your own? That's a very hard thing to do.
Uphill battle.
It's a huge uphill battle. Do you join a company that already matches your culture? What are the ways that you can actually, make a dent and change the culture? These are all really great questions. I don't necessarily have answers for them, but I do try different things. For example, one thing I tried to do to change a bit, well, it was more of focusing on product management. So it wasn't completely changing the culture of the organization. But I did like a book club for product management books or related books. So we started with Marty Kagan inspired, and we read it together across a few months, and we discussed it. I invited different stakeholders. I invited the dev team, designers, etc. And that was really interesting because after that, I started hearing things that came from the book, even though we didn't implemented everything and we're still not there, but it was still like some small change that I was able to make. And I think every one of us, we don't have to be afraid of trying to do these changes. There could be lots of ways to do that. And the culture, because the culture is not just about what we do as our work and activities, it could be also about social thing in the work that can help change the culture. And I know many people are worried that it's not their place to do it or whatever. But from my experience, what I've seen is that almost every company would be happy that these employees will come up with ideas for social gathering, social ideas to do together, like book clubs or whatever, right?
That's so true. I'm always people on my team who are always pushing initiatives or trying to challenge me. It's like, okay, cool, I'll let you run with it. Go for it. If you think there's some way to do it better, and I think it does ultimately come down to culture. You're right, and that's why you have companies like Amazon, as you said, and Shopify, Spotify. They're big companies, but their mindset and their approach is just like very startup-y, right? From that perspective. So
exactly.
I wanted to switch some of the other questions towards what you've been doing in the student and mentoring space. So I know you've been teaching and mentoring other product managers for some time now.
Yep.
Even in your own organization, you have your own book club that you created, so that's great. Yeah. What are some common challenges your students or your mentees are facing that has come up?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it divides between those that are already in product management and those that are not yet. Because I'm also talking with aspiring product managers, those that are trying to get into product management. I think for those that are not yet in product management, it's more about the opportunities and to see how they can actually create opportunities for themselves to do product management and not just talk or learn about it. And people sometimes don't realize that they can almost do everything in their life in a product management way. And it's just about being creative about it and find ways to do that. And then the question is then, how do they put it on the resume and how do they sell themselves with that experience? But if you start a podcast or if you create your own website or if you write a blog, that's also something that is could be seen as product management, and there could be different aspects in there. You just have to know how to look at that. For those that are already product managers, like everything else, it depends on their stage of product management. But one of the things that I've probably seen mostly missing is the understanding of all the different tool sets that you might want to have and competencies that you might want to have or need to have as a product manager, and how to evaluate where you are right now and what you need to do to move to the next level. And there are actually tools out there that a few people have put. One of them is Ravi Mehta, I think his name.
Yes.
So he put a tool for that, for specifically that lists all the different competencies and where you need to be. And then he has this type of, I don't remember how he calls it, but it looks like, these spider webs, but he calls it something else that associate product manager need to have that, product manager this, senior product manager, director, etc., etc. And I think it really can help us align with what our gaps are and where we want to move forward. And it's almost like a product. So we build a product, we have an MVP, and then what are the gaps and what are the strategy to move forward with that product?
Are there any kind of specific knowledge gaps that you have come across in product management from the conversations you had? I don't know, going from like APM to a PM, PM to senior PM.
Yeah, I can't really put my finger on one specifically.
Okay.
Because the different people I talked with had different different questions and different things that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm doing the mentorship as in, like, what are you dealing with right now? Let's discuss that and let's help you move forward with that specific issue. Sometimes it's more of how do I get, my next job in product management and stuff like that. But I didn't really see any specific gap. I think because there is a lot of data these days and there is a lot of articles and books and people talking about it. There is also a few, private schools that are teaching it and stuff like that. So people are reading about things and they're sharing. So there is a lot of information out there. Yeah. I am sometimes surprised about feedbacks that I get when I write, posts on LinkedIn about product management, because I write something and I will think about, everyone already knows that. Well, I'm not saying anything new. And then there will still be people that like, this is making a lot of sense. I didn't know that or whatever. Yeah. So there is definitely a lot of, still a lot of gaps out there, but nothing that I can put my finger on specifically.
Okay. Any best mentorship advice you've given to somebody? They're like, oh my God, that is mind blowing.
Well, I think talking about, talking about those that are aspiring to be product managers is to really go and build something on your own. So, and people that I told them that, they didn't realize that they can actually do that. They didn't give permissions to themselves to do it. So sometimes it's like, I don't have any ideas. But that's because they narrowed their perspective only on technology products for a startup or something like that. So they have no idea for a product. But you can really expand your vision on that and find ways to do this. Yeah. And I think that was probably, and I'm not the only one that said that. I mean, there are many other mentors that are saying the same thing. And I've done it I've done it once before, and I'm doing it now with someone else. Really taking an idea for a product and start running with it. Got it.
I mentioned it, I think, in the initial introduction, but for those who don't know, you do run your own. You contribute in a different way by also running your own podcast called Product for Product. Mm-hmm. And I was just on that episode with you. I did an episode with you, and you were asking me about the different kind of toolkits that we use in our business. I want to ask you, what have you learned about modern product toolkits from interviewing so many product managers that in different companies and different industries? Any one or any set that stand out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There is a few things there. One of them is the preference for a platform that does it all or does it as much as possible, to products that are more, they're doing one thing and they're doing it really good, and then they're integrated with other systems. Because on one hand, and I think this is a bit of a preference for people, because on one hand, you just pay once and you get all this functionality and you don't have to start looking for functionality in other places, or you don't have to put together all of these tools into one, patches, patched carpet or whatever. Yeah. But on the other end, they may not do the best on each specific functionality in there. So there may be another product that does it a bit better. That was one thing. The other thing is that there is quite a bit of competition out there in some areas. When we were doing the series for road mapping, and I know that you mentioned one road mapping product, but we did a series and we interviewed, I think, 4 or 5 users of those products. And to me, most of them seems to be quite the same. So there is also a bit of the competition there. It was hard to see what the differentiator between them. There are a few things in there. Unfortunately, our podcast right now is only audio, so we don't have a demo of the product itself to show to the listeners, what we're talking about. We're thinking maybe to add that in the future. But even just talking about those features, orally with audio only, it felt to me almost like if I would replace the name of the title of the episode, I wouldn't even know which product I'm talking about because they're so much the same. Yeah. So there is something interesting going on there, I think. Whether it is different people creating these type of products at about the same time and growing them, and then it almost became the same thing. I'm sure there are some differences between them for sure, but that was really the second thing that I was kind of like thinking about when you asked that question.
Are there any kind of tools you're most excited about covering next? I know we talked about no code and maybe A/B testing tools.
Yeah, definitely. I do have a list of themes and tools that I want to cover, and no code is definitely one of them. Mainly because I think it's a great thing for mockups and MVPs, not so much for productized products or long-term products. But I'm really interested to hear and see what people are saying about them and how they use them for that. A/B testing is definitely another one. And over there, actually, there is not too many products. So I'm curious to see if I will find, because sometimes through this research, I'm finding new products that I never knew about.
Right.
I'm also thinking about doing a series about products that are new. So usually we just interview users. So we don't want the product companies to be biased about it. We don't. So that's why we don't interview them. We interview their users. But with startup tools, they don't have enough users sometimes, or there is not enough reach and whatever. And I think there is a place to give them some, stage to talk about their products and stuff like that. So I'm thinking maybe also to have a series, because I've been approached by several startup founders that saw the podcast and they wanted to be presented in there, but they couldn't really give me, users that I could approach to speak with. So I was thinking maybe we will have something like that. And that's always exciting because I think startups are always really exciting to see what they're doing, what ideas they came up with. Can they really disrupt the industry? And then follow up on them in the future to see, where are they these days?
No, it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to those episodes then, because I want to check out what other options or other software is available.
Yeah, absolutely.
In those toolkits. A couple more questions. A lot of people don't know this, but you did write a book called The Ressurector.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was another passion project of mine. It's a novel. It's not about anything about product management. So it's not about resurrecting product management or anything like that. I started writing it in 2013, actually. So it's been really a long time since I started the project. But I only recently got it into a press, approved into a press for release. And it's coming in December this year, 2021. So I'm really excited about it. It's also a very interesting press because it's not a traditional press where you have an agent and the agent sell it to them and they put all of their efforts to, everything to make it happen. But they also take the risk on you, especially for a first-time author. Yeah. So usually you get like 5% or even less or whatever. This one is what they call a hybrid one, that they help you with all the different editing and marketing process, but you retain your rights on your book. So it's like at the end of the day, I'm really self-publishing, or it's indie what we call indie authors or indie publishing. So part of it was also to be able to excite people about it and do a pre-sale and let people know about the book and see that people will actually buy it. So I actually did a pre-sale campaign to sell it. And now I'm going through editing, so that's taking a lot of time with the editing process. But this community of people that already bought a copy from me are really helping me with that. So I have some beta readers from that and some other people that are reading some chapters. And when I will do when we'll do with the press the design of the covers, that will help me choose the right design and all of that stuff. And I'm also trying to treat that as a product at the end of the day, because the best way to build a product is with feedback from users, to find the personas and to have a more product market fit. With a book, and especially a fiction book, I felt it was a much harder thing to do, because people love to read, but not everyone. And then those that love to read, there are so many genres out there. What is it that they love to read exactly? So I even had a problem with my own book to decide what genre it is, because it has different topics and stuff like that. So you have to find the right people that will want to read your book, and that's also hard. And then you have to get their feedback, and you have to kind of improve the book. But once it's printed, that's it. Either you go to a second edition or not. So there is all of these aspects that I'm kind of learning myself in this process about that.
So it's really interesting. You mentioned before that you treat other aspects of what you do in life from a product perspective. So this is a great example of one. Mm-hmm. And how I kind of paint the correlation is that you did a pre-sale of the book, which is kind of like you're trying to get product market fit in a way. You're trying to go to the market with an MVP, and then you get some feedback, and then you refine, and then you launch the product, right? And then, as you said, once it's launched, it's kind of like you have one shot, right, to then succeed. Exactly.
So that's why I find it also harder. And when I sold it, I didn't even give them a full copy of the book. I told them what the book is about. We made a small ad, like a video, that kind of to incite people for that and stuff like that, because reading a book takes time. So imagine you will get, and I had, when I started this, I had like 75,000 words in the book. So imagine just sending 75,000 words for everyone and get their feedback. That will take a long time. So if I would have to start, let's say, with my next book, what I would probably do is create this community of the people that already know me and know my book, my first one, and give them chapters, and I will send them chapters and read that chapter and tell me what they think and stuff like that, and then build the second book in a much more iterative way than I could with the first one.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll stay tuned for that launch and hopefully get a copy so I could read it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Last one or two questions. This is kind of like a left field question, but where do you think product managers will be in 10 years from now, 2030? What are they going to be doing on a daily basis? Where will their focus be?
That is a very interesting question. I hope that most of us will be on the discovery side, then on the delivery side. Not that the delivery is not important, but I think the delivery, once the discovery is, there is a good discovery habit, like we talked about before, then we can actually find the right problems and find the right solutions to work on. And then it's almost like obvious what the next steps are. So not that I'm minimizing anything obvious, but the core, the what I see as the core of the product manager work is really in the hard places where you don't know things, and this is in the discovery process. I asked Marty Kagan if he knows the numbers, because he's talking all the time about feature factories, delivery teams, and empower teams. So I asked him, what are the numbers? How many are there? If I'm correct, I hope I'm quoting him right, but he said that about only less than 5% are empower team, like over the world with teams. And then probably the rest is maybe 60%, maybe 70% feature factories, and the rest are delivery teams. Okay. So where delivery team are just delivering, they don't even think about the features. Feature factories is a bit higher, I guess, where you actually get a feature, you do some discovery for the feature, but all you do is deliver a feature without an outcome and without being empowered for what you're trying to do. So that's actually is very sad statistics.
It is.
And hopefully in 10 years, it will be the opposite.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I think with what Teresa Torres covers in her book, around talking about continuous discovery, what you just mentioned, I really think that is hopefully a shift that will take place in the market.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you want to mention or to say before we sign off for this episode?
Maybe one last thing. It's also related to the last question, and this is about more official studies for product management. So today, people are being taken off from MBA courses, or whatever background they have, and then if they want to get a product management, certificate or whatever, they usually go to one of the private schools. And I think that there need to be a shift in there to the universities to actually adopt product management as a stream of studies, because right now the way most universities don't even talk about this, the way based on my own personal research, so I might be wrong there. I've seen in a few places, but most of them don't. What they talk is about information systems, or they talk about management, like MBA or stuff like that. And then you have different streams inside information systems. They talk about design, so design thinking and design in general is very strong in universities, but anything related to product management is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
And if they see it that way, that means that it's not a real thing, and you have to kind of find your way to get there, which I think is very... it's probably because it's still a very young and profession, and there is still a lot of chaos out there about what does it mean exactly to be a product manager. But I feel that this is one of those things that I also hope that in 10 years it will be much more abundant.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I hope there is that shift in the education side, in the education system, to actually start teaching some of these things, because I think we live with products all day long, 24/7. We're using them, constantly. Like, to be able to understand what it takes to build one, I think is a gap that I think I never studied in university either. So that's a great point. That's also a great way to wrap up. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, and thank you. Thank you, especially when you mentioned that Teresa Torres is on the show as well and stuff like that. I'm feeling really humbled that you invited me to be a guest as well.
Yeah, no problem. So was actually Navi. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Ravi, sorry. Ravi.
Yeah, Ravi. So I'm glad that I mentioned his name as well.
Yeah. And so for all of our listeners, tune in next time to hear more about us having conversations with product innovation professionals and them sharing their insights. So till next time, everybody, take care.